radio is broadcast on LSL Podcast Channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
Y'all remember that, Donald Trump? That was September of 2016. A year ago. This was right before the first debate. And at a time where he could bring 20,000 people in the middle of the week into a stadium to talk to. And, of course, it was the campaign season, so I don't think people are going to show up to rallies during a campaign season, but that was Trump at his finest. And you know why? I was thinking back on this. It was simple. It was a simple truth that the rule of law must mean something. And without borders enforced, we have no real country. We have an amalgamation of people. People, whether you got here legally, didn't get here legally, you're here, so you're a worker widget. You're really not, it's really not about independence or freedom or the republic or electing representatives who reflect your will. It's not really about that. It's about just being here. America's just being here. And as a country defined by, but not really, because if you ever if you ever act on deporting individuals who are here illegally, then you become the antithesis of what it means for the progressives and the Bush Republicans to be an American. So it's a curious thing. They want to define what it is to be an American by removing the idea of sovereignty and borders, which is at the heart of defining the actual physical America. Isn't that weird? So we're not Americans because we believe, yes, if you're here illegally, you don't get special privileges. You shouldn't get any benefits. You shouldn't be able to work. Businesses should be penalized for hiring you. The government's at fault for not enforcing the border appropriately, properly. But we don't just look the other way. Okay, because you got 2 feet over the border. We don't look the other way and say, okay, good on ya. Glad you made it. Welcome. No. That's not how it works. But you see how twisted that is? In how Republicans failing to live up to the ideals of this republic. And I focus on the Republicans now. They're the ones who really got us into this mess. I believe Reagan ultimately thought the Simpson-Mazzoli amnesty, I just sneezed, sorry, was...
Bless you.
Yeah, thank you. Was one of the worst decisions he ever made. Because it ended up being concurrent amnesty with a promise of enforcement. But there was no concurrent. It was the enforcement part never came. So Reagan, after he did that 1986 amnesty, then you end up seeing how it actually played out. And the promise of border security never really happened. And then years go by. We have 10 million, 12 million, 15 million, 20 million, however many people are here years and years later. So now we have, however many, 15 million people here illegally, 300,000 have been ordered deported, never showed up for their deportation hearings. They're just here. They're not going anywhere. It doesn't matter if we have a deportation hearing or not scheduled. They're just not going to come. And no one's going to make them come. And we're the ones who are acting contrary to the ideals of America because we say, no, that's not right. Donald Trump was castigated, the calumny directed toward him all throughout the campaign because he said, the DACA kids, I understand they're here, but ultimately they're going to have to go home. And we're not doing this old Washington thing anymore. We're not doing this. We're doing it a different way. So he was just slammed by the mainstream media. All these Republicans, Marco, Jeb, going back to the debates. We should watch them and remember what happened to those exchanges at the debates. The Republican debates were filled with immigration exchanges.
Mr. Trump, you've called for a deportation force to remove the 11 million undocumented immigrants from the United States. You've also promised to let what you call the good ones come back in after they've been deported.
We have at least 11 million people in this country that came in illegally. They will go out.
They will come back. Some will come back, the best, through a process. They have to come back legally. They have to come back through a process, and it may not be a very quick process, but I think that's very fair and very fine. They're going to get online with other people. The best of them will come back, but they're going to come back through a process.
Yeah, well, we didn't play all the applause, but the reaction every time he said that was, thank God someone is finally expressing what we think. We're not anti-immigrant. We love immigrants. But the way we've been doing it is a joke. And now we have kids who are having kids who now it's, oh, instantly they're American citizens because of the stupid system we have with this birthright citizenship. And then they anchor, then they never leave, and that, it goes on and on and on. But you see how wild this is? And so then Donald Trump has this dinner with Pelosi and Schumer. All the confusion ensued after Schumer and Pelosi come out. They say, "Oh, we got it. We're not giving him the border wall." He agreed to that. Sarah Huckabee Sanders comes out and says, "Well, no, that's not exactly right." Trump comes out later in the day, and he tried to clarify. And you have to listen carefully because it's over the, for some reason no one will give Donald Trump a microphone. I don't know why he's always heard over a plane, the Air Force One sound, but let's listen.
We're working on a plan for DACA. People want to see that happen. You have 800,000 young people brought here, no fault of their own. So we're working on a plan. We'll see how it works out. But we're going to get massive border security as part of that. And I think something can happen. We'll see what happens. But something will happen.
Well, something will happen is that your base will abandon you if you don't do what you said you were going to do. Raymond Arroyo is with us here on the Laura Ingraham Show. And Raymond, I went through the call list yesterday. And what we gather is that about 97% of the calls that came in were expressing some level of outrage, disappointment, fury, sadness, betrayal. I'm using words that our callers used yesterday, and I imagine we're going to hear from more of them today.
One of the things one hopes would happen instantly is that we get the president a bullhorn so he doesn't have to shout over the lawn, the chopper, and the caravan to be heard, A. B, I hope he listens to his base. It's clear what they're saying. He promised them one thing. And, specifics are something that has always eluded the president. He's not a policy guy. He's not somebody who will drill down into the deep weeds. However, when you make a general promise to the American people that you're going to build a wall, that you want the dreamers out, and that's what he said, very simple concepts. Now we start getting into the weeds about, well, we're not going to give citizenship, we're going to let them stay, but not citizenship, it's not a path, but it might be, but the wall's going to come later, but we're rebuilding the fences. It makes people nervous. And Donald Trump, I think, is a very short window here to reassure his base. And those are not Republicans, by the way. Those are working-class Democrats, blue-collar Reagan Democrats as well. He's got to reassure that base that he meant what he said and find a way to do that and make good on those promises.
Well, I think that in watching what happened yesterday and hearing from fellow conservatives, the populist conservatives. I'm not talking about the Jeb Bush conservatives. I'm not talking about the George Bush conservatives. I'm talking about conservatives, Reagan conservatives, people who were in the Reagan administration, who worked in the Reagan administration at high levels, who are still great thinkers and analysts of the scene. It's obvious to them that this is one of those moments. This is I hate the phrase inflection point, but it really is in this presidency. If you're seen as someone on an issue like this to be rolled by the Democrats, then they're not going to trust you on other things because that was your whole campaign. You're the deal maker, and deals are great, as Craig Shirley said, as long as they're good deals. And DACA is a bad deal. If this deal is what it was described as, it's a really bad deal because the border wall funding, if not made part of this, will never happen. Let me say it more slowly. Never happen. Okay? Never. You're not going to get a penny toward the border wall. You know what you'll have? You'll have some You'll have some of that chicken wire fencing. You'll have the Border Patrol agents, Homeland Security. You'll have them like with nails and hammers kind of putting chicken wire up around those fences that Trump tweeted out that they're going to repair. In some
Repairing
cases,
the fence is
in some cases they're going to be, the fences are going to be repaired. What? The fence? Build the fence. Yeah, crickets. Who the heck was cheering about build the fence or repair the fence? They were cheering for build the wall. And it's not just the wall, though. It's got to be E-Verify the wall, the RAISE Act, serious internal enforcement. And I think someone said to me yesterday, who is not in agreement with me, said to me, well, Laura, so what would you have suggested to the president? That just let the Republicans handle this? And they would have just delivered to him a bill for legalization of the so-called dreamers with no border security. So what would you have done, Laura? Would you have had him veto that? You know what my answer was? To quote Sarah Palin, you betcha. You betcha he would have vetoed it. And you know what he would have done? He would have given an address to the nation, and he would have said, what I campaigned on is what I'm all about. You, the American people. You, the middle-class worker. You, the forgotten man and woman. Your lives are what my focus is. I want the best for all people around the world, and we've done a hell of a lot to help a lot of people around the world, including those who are here illegally. But what I will not do is agree to a promise of enforcement later for amnesty now. And that is exactly what the Republicans always deliver. They tried it in 2007 with the McCain-Bush amnesty, Kennedy-McCain-Bush. They tried it in 2013-14 with what Boehner and McConnell, Rubio, Schumer, the whole gang of eight, Bob Corker, John Hoeven, they were all trying to cook this up in this 843-page immigration bill back in 2013-2014. But for those of us who read it, and unfortunately I did. We printed. Remember, we had the whole thing printed out in the studio. That thing was like 4 Encyclopedia Britannicas. Once you actually got to the pages about DHS discretion, we discovered that the DHS secretary, Homeland Security secretary, had wide discretion to essentially dismiss or make exceptions for any individual who couldn't pay the fine, who didn't have documentation as to when he or she came, who didn't qualify under the normal. I think there were 10, as I can recall, 10 qualifications, 10 ways that you could qualify for amnesty in 2013. It was like if you were suffering from an illness, if you were already in school but there were ways for the DHS secretary just to waive all those requirements. And so essentially the requirements were like Swiss cheese, meant nothing, like the border. You could walk right through and still get the waived in amnesty status. If you didn't have the money, you didn't have the documentation, you hadn't yet enrolled in English classes. Remember Rubio kept saying you have to know English? No, you don't. Under the old bill, I know I'm doing a little historical, reflection for you here, but it's important. In the old bill, it kept being described as something like, this is the toughest, most stringent requirements ever for amnesty. Then you start reading it. All you have to do is show proof that you are going to enroll in some type of English learning program. Not that you are even enrolled in it, but that you have plans to. Oh, come on. So it's ridiculous. All this was happening. By the way, Joe Scarborough was at it again today. He was claiming once again, after all of his failed, faulty, wrong-headed predictions and proclamations during the 2016 election, he declared once again that he really knows the true heart of the Trump voters.
The people who were complaining and screaming and bellowing and making the loudest noise, again, we can't underline this fact enough. They are doing that in support of a 12% proposition. They are the 12%. They're not the 1%, my friends. They are the 12%. The other 88% think this is a good idea. So if you're going to say that Donald Trump's going to lose his base and locusts are going to descend from the heavens and eat the flesh from his bones,
it's just bad TV.
You're going to have to pick another issue to do it on that 80% of Americans don't support.
Well, he's grounding his conclusion on this one Politico poll. the Morning Consult Politico poll. And the alternatives in the question, like what would you prefer be done? It was like deport people or give them a path to legalization or nothing, I think. Well, as Donald Trump even said in that comment that we played, there's never a roving deportation force for people who aren't violating laws. That was never what Donald Trump was arguing for. So that in and of itself is just a faulty premise on which to base a poll. But you ask people, do you think illegal immigrants should get special benefits? What do you think that is? 80-20? Ahead of American citizens? It's got to be an 80-20 question. So for every little Morning Consult poll he can pull out, I can show an old Gallup poll that says people want immigration levels decreased or at the best to stay the same, but not increased at all. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. Is Scarborough right? You all don't care about this. Or is this one of those issues that could break your allegiance to the Trump train? That's the towering intellect Casey Hunt over there at MSNBC. Well, no, Casey, actually, if you know anything about the amnesty wars of the past, you'll know that it is absolutely integral to real border enforcement and any type of, credibility that the president wants to preserve on the issue of immigration enforcement. If you don't use your leverage to get the wall now, you will never get it. Ever, ever, ever. It's never going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. You will not get a cent for this wall unless you get it right now. You have no leverage later on. And I'll play you what Donald Trump said yesterday on the tarmac about the wall and obstructionists. Coming up, Mickey Kaus, a Democrat who agrees with us on this. You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Well, that was the president yesterday after traveling to Florida, hurricane relief. It was a great visit on that score, that's for sure. But in Washington, he left behind a lot of confusion and a lot of glee on the part of the open borders crowd. They thought, I think, that when President Trump won that surprise, an outstanding victory, November of 2016, their dreams of amnesty were going to go down the tubes, and suddenly we're going to get border enforcement, and the people were going to rally to border enforcement. But now, less than a year later, he came out of a dinner with Nancy and Chuck, and at least according to the Democrats, they got him to agree to give amnesty to 800,000 people with no wall. There's no wall as part of that deal. And by the way, Donald Trump yesterday said that there will be a wall, but and that he's not going to tolerate obstructionists in funding the wall. My question to him would be, how? If you don't get the wall now, how are you ever going to get it in the future? Joining us now is a terrific writer, columnist, thinker, one of the few people who predicted that Trump would have a big following as a populist on these issues like trade and immigration. Mickey Kaus joins us now. Mickey, great to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Thanks, Laura. I'm doing okay.
We're holding up after the dinner date, supper club. We can call it the Amnesty Supper Club, Mickey.
Right. It was a bad week in the world of immigration restrictionists. This bill he agreed to, Chuck Schumer claims it's not just legalizing the people that Obama had given a pass to, the 800,000. It's the much bigger DREAM Act, which applies to a much larger population of 1, 2, maybe even 3 million people. So it's a huge concession for which he got basically nothing. He got the same collection of let's throw money at it and please the conservatives that the Democrats usually throw at this problem. We're going to have sensors, we're going to have drones, we're going to spend billions without offense, without increasing the border patrol, and without doing the things that people wanted to get for this. They wanted an expansion of E-Verify, the electronic system where employers check new hires, and they wanted to end this chain migration where that 3 million is going to bring 2, 3, maybe even 6 times the number of people to America when they bring their parents, their wives, their brother-in-laws, their brothers' brother-in-laws. The typical multiple for a family from Mexico is 6. From the rest of the world, it's like 3. Mm-hmm. So the hope was that some of Tom Cotton's bill, which would curtail that, would be part of the compromise.
Well, I have a question. The fought by, and these are by the people who, invariably will say one day Trump is insane, the next day he's a racist, he's a white supremacist, he's nice to white supremacists, and he likes David Duke. I mean, these same people who make that point are saying that the base is fine. It's a cult of personality, and they will stay with Trump no matter what. And yesterday, I compiled a montage of my callers. I believe this is on LifeZet now. Yes, it's on LifeZet.com and on our website, LauraIngraham.com. People can listen to what the people said yesterday. They don't want any part of this amnesty, and especially when it's not preceded by a period of wall funding, the RAISE Act, E-Verify, that is set in stone. And cult of personality. I mean, people were in open revolt yesterday.
Right. It's very condescending. They say, oh, well, they're only trouble because they're not trouble because of the issue. They're not trouble because they care about immigration. They're trouble because he dealt with Pelosi, and they have this hatred of Pelosi, this irrational hatred of Pelosi. No, it's because we elected Trump because of the issues, and he's betraying us on our issues.
Matt Lewis was on MSNBC, I think it was MSNBC or CNN yesterday, and he tried to make this point. Let's listen.
People like Ann Coulter, Steve King, people who are, sort of single-issue restrictionists, immigration restrictionists, will not be happy with this. That is a very small contingent, though, I would say. Remember, Donald Trump also said, I could stand on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody.
In the middle, he said. Not just on, in the middle.
And my supporters would stick with me. So I think that Donald Trump is so beloved right now, and he's the only game in town if this is your issue. So I think that he's got a lot more leeway with his base than we think.
Well, the reason, Mickey, he had such an allegiance from the base is because they believed he was on their side on issues like this. So they were willing to overlook his comments about the Khizr Khan or McCain, the war hero stuff, or even the Billy Bush tape, because he was with them on issues like immigration. So the analysis is exactly backward. Once you betray people, if that's what happens, and I hope it doesn't, on an issue like immigration, why would they be, because he was on The Apprentice? I mean, it makes no sense.
Right. No, exactly. Matt Lewis has always been for the Republicans conceding the immigration issue to the Democrats on the misguided theory that I guess that it will increase Republican appeal to Latinos and others more than in a way that more than makes up for the fact that we're letting millions and millions of people who tend to vote Democratic into the country. I've never understood his position, so this is sort of wishful thinking on his part. I don't think people like Ann Coulter have given up on Trump, but Trump needs to know that this was a betrayal, and he needs to hear from people. I think he did hear. Not happy about.
He did hear from people yesterday. I'll just leave it at that. He did hear from people yesterday. There's another point I want to raise. Again, people aren't quite on top of this because most media, they don't report it. The number of aliens apprehended or deemed inadmissible by authorities on the southwest border last month has spiked. CNS News has a new piece out. Since April, the number of illegal aliens trying to get into the United States along the southwest border has been steadily rising, reaching a total of 30,567 in August, a 22.5% increase from July and almost twice the 15,771 recorded in April. So in other words, right after the election, people, I think a lot of the, the would-be illegals were like, we better not even try it. There's no point. This guy's going to send us home. It's a waste of our time. But now people are starting to hear, and the word's getting out in Mexico and Guatemala and so forth, that there's wiggle room here. And it's amazing how the word trickles down. And then people start coming in. That's exactly what we have now. And do you not predict, Mickey, that there will be another surge of some sort at the border now that this word is out again?
Certainly. And it makes sense that the word travels fast. I mean, people have cell phones everywhere. Right. So they get a call from their brother who says it's not that bad. Come on up. Plus, the economy here is quite strong, and as it gets stronger, that's a huge magnet for people, and just when Americans are starting to feel the benefits of it, the wages at the bottom of the labor market are starting to rise, finally, then the surge of illegal immigrants comes in and tamps that back down.
The PR that has accompanied the, quote, dreamers, Mickey, is something that would make any slick Madison Avenue ad executive very proud. Tell us the real truth about the dreamers, because the way even Donald Trump sounded like Marco Rubio yesterday. Like, these are all good people, they're working, they're in the military, et cetera, et cetera. What do we know about the dreamers?
Trump swallowed the PR hook, line, and sinker. The first thing is that we're told that the dreamers came here through no fault of their own, brought by their parents. Well, at a young age. Well, to be a dreamer, you don't have to be brought by anybody, let alone your parents. You just have to come when you were under 16. So not necessarily at a young age. You could have come at 15 in defiance of your parents. You could have come at 15 because the local drug gang member told you to come to help with the enterprise. It could be a variety of reasons. Second, we're told that this is a common mistake that's been in the New York Times, they have to have graduated high school. No, they don't. You can't be a total high school dropout, but if you enroll in one course, don't have to graduate high school, enroll in one course, it could be an online course, an English as second language course, then you could be a dreamer. And you don't even have to stay with the course. Under Obama, you could drop the course and you still be a dreamer. So the education requirements are pretty low. This is not an especially skilled population. It's an average population. They're good people. They're doing fine, but they're not. We're told of the rocket scientists and the oncologists and the military personnel. In fact, that's just not the case. There's a large percent that are high school dropouts. There's a relatively small compared to the general population percent that are in college graduates. And when they go to work, the average wage is about $15.34. The median wage, is $15.34, meaning everybody below that's half of them are below $15.34. They're competing with unskilled Americans. So that doesn't mean they shouldn't get protection. It doesn't mean they're bad people, but it means that if we give them protection, we have to have something to compensate for the incentive effect that you describe, some beefed up security like E-Verify, to make sure that we don't get this renewed surge that drives wages further down.
I think one of the ways that we restrictionists, immigration pragmatists, I would say, should describe this to people to help with the narrative. Say, look, immigration decisions have almost always been made on an individualized basis. And so just describing people with this very convenient label of dreamers, it's all a monolith. They're all dreamers. They're all good people. Well, okay, we understand why you're doing that. But insofar as there are people who are accomplished and great people and doing all the right things, well, they could apply at some point to get legal status on an individual basis, and individually they could be considered. But a blanket amnesty of 800,000, which, as you say, is a lot more, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, there are people who've committed crimes. There are people who have dropped out. There are people who have dabbled in drug use. There are people who are in criminal gangs. Maybe they haven't been apprehended yet, but they have a criminal gang association. So there seems to be a way to individually consider people with the Republicans moving forward on tough border enforcement that is undoable. Like, you can't undo a wall. That's why a wall is so important. You can't undo it. You're not going to bulldoze a wall like you bulldoze or take down Robert E. Lee. That's just not going to happen. So to me, decisions have to be made on an individual basis. And that would also, I think, accomplish a lot more.
That's one possible reasonable solution to the problem, which is you take the existing population of so-called dreamers and you go through them on an individual basis. Newt Gingrich's draft board solution. Mm-hmm. You go through them like a draft board, and the best ones got to stay. You know, there are more generations of dreamers in the wings. They're the so-called legal dreamers who came on a different kind of visa. They're dreamers who were too young to get this.
I'm sick of the phrase. I'm sick of the word dreamers. I'm not using it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it.
They're people who are too young to be part of this existing group. You know, the existing group is like 15 to 34 years old. They're not young anymore. But so the younger ones, they're going to ask for their own amnesty.
Well, what about the parents? Then the Democrats and the illegal immigrants are going to say, "What about our parents?" And then Trump will say, well, they can't stay." And so then what's going to happen?
He doesn't have to do it. Under law, they're allowed to bring in their parents. They don't have to ask for anything. You'd have to change the law, and that's part of what Tom Cotton is trying to do to prevent them from bringing in their parents. The parents who are at fault.
Oh, the parents who are here, and the Democrats. That will be the next thing, right, Mickey? It's never about the thing. It's always about the next thing. Same thing with a lot of other issues too. It's not about gay marriage. It's about transgenderism in the military. Then it's about, you know what I mean? It's always on to the next thing. So anyway, we appreciate it. Mickey Kaus wrote a great piece for the Washington Post about don't buy the hooey on the Dreamers, and boy, was it well timed. We'll take a break. Don't go away. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. Remember, Billionaire at the Barricades: The Populist Revolution from Reagan to Trump is out in just a few weeks. Pre-order your copy now. We're going to have a riot on the book tour. We're going to treat it like a campaign of sorts. You'll see what I mean. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. That was Chuck Schumer, and supposedly a hot mic moment. I thought to myself, is that real? I mean, he's pretty smart. Maybe he wanted to be heard. He wanted that to be heard. Raymond Arroyo is with us here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Raymond, didn't he also talk about how he likes me more than he likes Nancy? Right?
He said it right at the top. You might have had trouble hearing it, but it was there in the bite. Oh. He said, "Look, he likes me. He likes me more than I don't know if he likes you, but he likes me." Yeah, it was kind of muddled, but maybe we can re-cue it. But I thought it was interesting because Schumer clearly believes, and the way he was imparting this to his colleagues, was that the president is listening to him. You can step a little right, you can step a little left. If he starts taking cues from Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump's in big trouble.
Yeah, cues and advice from Chuck Schumer. We have a lot of people on the line. Washington Post, New York Times, U.S. News and World Report all covered what we discussed yesterday. We were part of all their coverage on the conservative revolt on the DACA amnesty deal. And so keep it up. You're being heard. Your voices are being heard. Your comments are being heard. Everything from the word outrage to betrayal to disappointment to sadness to primary him. That was the other phrase we heard yesterday repeatedly. Well, maybe look, we have to primary senators. Maybe we're going to have to primary this president in 2020. We thought he was a conservative populist. We thought he was a nationalist on issues of immigration. And if he's not, then we're going to have to find someone who is. But this is the opportunity that Donald Trump has to establish himself as a champion of the everyman. And he campaigned on that, but now he can actually be that. And if he just does what he says he was going to do in the campaign, he'll be wildly popular. But he's never going to please the Dreamers. He's never going to please the Democrats. Even if he does a deal with the Democrats on the Dreamers, it's not like they're not going to like him. They're just going to use him. There's a piece in the Washington Post claiming that polls show that Trump has some room to change on Dreamers. Let me just say right off the bat, I completely disagree with the premise of this piece for the reasons that I've already stated. The best polling on immigration has been done by Gallup. Taylor, print me out the Gallup polling on immigration. It's not in my stack. But the best polling over the last few years on immigration shows that most Americans believe that we either need to limit the number of legal immigrants coming into the country or keep it the same. They don't want more problems. They're not anti-immigrant, but it's like we're full up. We don't need more people. So they hang this whole article on, though Donald Trump's he's with the 80% who want to help the Dreamers. First of all, the Trump voters overwhelmingly want immigration enforcement done. They overwhelmingly want the wall. Here's
like 75%.
75%. So here's some stats. So this is the piece. Polling suggests that Trump has more room to maneuver with his base on the question of Dreamers than on other planks of immigration reform. First of all, I want to ask my listeners, do you agree with that? Well, but you see, we're tying Dreamers to the wall. They're not in the Washington Post. They just ask a question without any regard to border security. Do you think we should deport the Dreamers who are here now? Of course people are going to say, no, don't deport them. They've been here 10 years. Most people are not going to say deport them. But if you add to the question, do you believe that illegal immigrants currently living here should get benefits, work opportunities, and in-state tuition at the same level as green card holders and American citizens? Yes, no. What do you think that answer would be? Overwhelmingly it would be no. But they don't ask that question. Or do you think amnesty should come first and border enforcement promises later? Or do you think if amnesty is granted, the wall must be first, real enforcement must be first? I'm sure. I mean, see what I'm saying? So it always depends on how these things are framed. This piece goes on. So it says that 67% supported building a southern border wall. 80% said speaking English was very important to being American. By the way, a lot of these new illegal immigrants don't speak very proficient English. And 80% were opposed to letting Syrian refugees into the United States. So we're saying that among Trump supporters, 80% don't want Syrian refugees, but 80% want amnesty with no border enforcement? That's just ridiculous.
Doesn't fit in my mind, a piece of paper which really determines, if we're Americans or citizens or not.
But among the same voters, it claims 68% said child migrants, again, average age now 23, child migrants brought illegally who have been here 10 years and have graduated high school should be allowed to stay in the country. As Mickey Kaus just said, to be a dreamer, to qualify for dreamer status right now, you don't have to have graduated from high school. You just have to show that you enrolled in a course or that you were enrolling in a course, but not, you don't have to show that you graduated high school. That's a lie. That's not even true. That's what the White House is wrestling with right now, said Jim McLaughlin, a campaign pollster for Trump who consults with the White House. Trump waffled during the campaign over how he would handle the Dreamers. In the summer of 2015, he went on CNN. He said he would have a deal with a group with a big heart. Then changed his tack weeks later, telling NBC News of those same migrants, quote, "We're going to keep the families together, but they have to go." Okay? So that's what he told NBC. They have to go. Behind the scenes of the campaign, Trump spoke often of the possibility of dealing with childhood arrivals with a gentler hand, according to several former Trump campaign advisors. California-based pastor Samuel Rodriguez, who led a prayer at Trump's inauguration, said he spoke repeatedly with Trump during the campaign about the Dreamers issue. And his comment is this. His commentary and his commitment to building the wall and stopping illegal immigration was very rigid and very fixed, said Rodriguez, who serves as the president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. And he goes on to say this. The moment I brought up Dreamers, everything shifted. In fact, at one point, he brought up the fact that he was a father and a grandfather. After the election, Trump began to signal publicly that he planned to work something out about young undocumented immigrants. They were brought here at a very young age. They've worked here. They've gone to school here, he said 3 weeks after the election. Emotion. The emotion of the campaign was married to substance that drove people to these rallies. Are you emotionally invested in the so-called Dreamers? By the way, the Washington Post doesn't even use it as an acronym any longer. They just say Dreamers, lowercase d. They don't even use the capital D. It's the lowercase d. They're the Dreamers.
There's also, Laura, a big problem here, rhetorically and otherwise, when you have people who are not citizens saying, I am an American in every way but having a document or a piece of paper. Well, that's just not true. Citizenship is conferred. There are people all over the world who are Americans in their heart, but they're not, in fact, Americans. The United States confers that honor, that right to people. It's not an obligation on the part of the United States. And we have to set benchmarks. Otherwise, the whole world would naturally want to come to America. Let's face it, we have a better way of life. Our economy's better. Our people are very innovative. We're entrepreneurs. Who wouldn't want to come? But we have to, at some point, find just ways to regulate and control our own borders. That's what he's saying. And if he starts to waffle on this emotional argument, which is,
you'll never win.
I'm an American.
You'll never win on the emotion. You'll never win. Trump won when he showed a heart for the American working class. He won when he said, I'm here for the forgotten man and woman. He didn't say, I'm here for the dreamers. He said, I'm here for you. The people who've been sold out and bad policies, globalization, offshoring your jobs, and the people who've been ignored and lied to and dismissed all these years. I'm here for you. He didn't say he was for the dreamers. He didn't say he was, repeatedly say he was going to deport them, which was smart. He said, I'm for the American people first. America first.
And these are people that come over the country, the dreamers. And I said, what about our children? Why can't our children that are in the country, why can't they be the dreamers? Yeah. Nobody ever talks about that.
Listen, and the crowd always starts to go crazy. Let's go to Pastor Brewer on line 4 in Nevada. And, of course, Nevada is hit especially hard by the illegal immigration problem. Flatlining wages, and they already have, the fortunes of Nevada oftentimes are tied to the overall economy, more acutely, because if you don't have money to blow in Vegas, not that Vegas is the whole state, but it's a big part of the state. And the economy there is tied to the hospitality industry. And if you don't have money, you're not going to be going to Vegas. Pastor Brewer, go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. I get up every morning and I lift weights and I listen to you and I get my coffee and I can't wait to get you on the radio.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I want to thank you for taking I want to thank you for taking a stand. The reason why I voted for President Trump is because he spoke for me. There was no one that ever spoke for us. And I look at it that when these people were screaming out here, not my president, I said, that's exactly how I felt about President Obama. He wasn't my president. And these people were screaming, not my president. Well, I didn't have no one to speak up for me. And I want to thank you for speaking up.
I will.
Being a pastor for over 40 years, I look at the Bible and I look at Apostle Paul, how he appealed unto Caesar, it was great to be a Roman citizen, and it's great to be an American citizen. I think that we are just stabbing these soldiers. No one think about the American soldiers, how we're stabbing them in the back. And then these men are dying for us. They're fighting. My father fought in the Second World War. My grandfather fought in the Civil War. I've been in this country for over 200 years. There's been brewers in this country for over 200 years.
All right.
Have fought, paid the taxes.
I'm frustrated. I don't blame you. I appreciate the call and for listening while you're lifting weights. Good for you for lifting the weights. Stay fit. We need you in this battle. Let's go to Dan in Florida on line 1. Dan, go ahead.
Pelosi and Schumer were part of the Tip O'Neill Democrat Congress that made the promise to Reagan that they would do border enforcement with amnesty, and this would be the last time. This is Trump's opportunity to force their hand. He needs to build the wall. It needs to be fully funded, and it needs to be 50% complete, and everybody needs to move out that's not here legally, and after the wall's 50% complete, then we can have discussions about bringing them back.
Yeah, no, apparently what the Republicans want is to cut the deal for amnesty first, and then we'll get that border enforcement, and we'll get all the drones flying over the border and the surveillance. But you see, they're never going to do the border enforcement. They never do. Big business doesn't want it. The hospitality industry doesn't want it. Agriculture doesn't want it. So they're not going to do it unless they're forced to do it, unless we the people force them to represent the American worker first, the American citizen first. It's America first. That's his whole campaign pledge. America first. Well, America is a country, as he said repeatedly, with borders. They have to mean something. 855-40-LAURA. We're going to take a break. We'll get to all your calls on this. The emotion. What part of the emotional argument of Trump propelled you to vote for him? Sent you to the polls? Brought you to a rally? Was it an emotion for, immigration reform? That's a translation, amnesty. Emotion about working with the Democrats on DACA, or is it a different type of an emotion tied to the substantive push for America First policies? And does this issue matter to you? The press is repeating this lie that it doesn't matter to you. We're showing them, we showed them yesterday and we're showing them today that in fact it does matter to you. But I'm willing to be proven wrong. If you're fine with what's going on, you can call me as well. I want to hear from all of you. Don't go away. Not going to get the wall unless you get the funding now for it. Not going to get it. Laura Ingraham here with Raymond Arroyo. The president was kind of here, there, and everywhere on this issue, both on Twitter and some of his comments yesterday. I think a lot of people are just scratching their heads. Maybe that's purposeful. I don't know. But that's what Rubio said during the Gang of Eight. It's not amnesty, but it was amnesty. Because there was no precursor enforcement. Never happened. Let's go to line 2. Jim in Florida. Go ahead.
Hello, Laura. The thing is, if the government wasn't giving people money when they get here illegally, or they wouldn't be coming. They got to stop giving money away to people that just cross the border and they go to these amnesty cities and they file for money and they get free money. They don't have to do anything. If there wasn't free money when they come across,
but Jim, the Democrats are all about big government. Big government gives out money to people who don't work, or people who say, "Look, I need help." I mean, look, I believe in a social safety net for Americans. How about we call them American dreamers versus alien dreamers? Alien dreamers. Oh, you can't say alien. Well, the U.S. Code says alien all over it. Inadmissible aliens. Those who are not allowed to come into the country. Inadmissible aliens. If you walk across the border, you are deemed to be an inadmissible alien, subject to deportation. That's in the U.S. Code. I know because I did a very interesting immigration case once in my old lawyer days. I learned about it. So we'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. We have a lot more to get to. Sarah Carter from Circa is going to stop by. We have a terror attack again in England, as I guess they're just going to get used to this. This is just the new normal, and all throughout Europe, this is what they've wrought on themselves with open borders. That is Susan Rice, not so long ago, a couple months ago, and now it turns out that she actually is aware of unmasking that was done during the Obama administration of Trump campaign officials back then. And we're going to learn about that in just a few moments with Sarah Carter from Circa News, who's been doing great reporting. Susan Rice actually testified and told private investigators exactly what happened regarding the unmasking. It seems to contradict that soundbite you just heard. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment with Sarah. But a lot of you want to be heard, and the sound files are being put together. All of your comments. Try to keep them pithy and keep them, clear on why the issue of amnesty without a wall and all these other things like E-Verify, real enforcement, why that issue matters to you or not. But we're putting it together. We're making a list and checking it twice. Carolyn in Georgia, line 4 before we get to Sarah Carter. Carolyn.
Yes, I just wanted to say that when you say yes to one group, you're saying no to the other group. And the Democrats have said no to the American people for years. And I voted for President Trump's office because he was going to say yes to the American people and no to all those who are all the illegals who are breaking our laws, stealing our jobs. So when he says things like, should I send soldiers, business, on people home, I'm like, you bet. Because if we don't, we're betraying the American people's right to be first. and to have a chance at a better life.
Well, that's why he was elected. I mean, 2 words. America first. 3 words. Build the wall. I mean, the thing that people may forgive him on and give him leeway on is Mexico's going to pay for it. That's what people are, I think, okay, yeah, Mexico's probably not going to pay for it. But why don't we tax the remittances going back to Mexico? Why don't we slap a 25% fee on those remittances? People who are here illegally sending money back home. Okay, you can send money back home. We're taking 25% of it or 20% of it. Lots of things you could do to get that money for wall and for maintenance of the wall. Boy, they have no problem up on Capitol Hill finding money for cockamamie ideas when they want to. But, the wall? Oh, no, we can't find money for that. Bobby in Nevada, really quickly. Bobby.
Yes, ma'am. If my way of thinking that if you come to our country invited to the front door, you are an immigrant and entitled to everything that our country has to offer. Otherwise, you're just an invader. And our country is being invaded by these people.
Well, you can't do it. You can't do it in any other country and get these benefits. Try going to the European Union as a non-Muslim refugee. Muslim refugees kind of can, they don't have the greatest life, but they can usually stay once they go. But try going as an American to Europe and trying to work without a work permit. Good luck. No way. They don't allow you to do it. And for good reason. They should apply the same analysis to the refugees there. Joining us now is Sarah Carter from Circa News, an exclusive on what happened with this Susan Rice. There's a piece, I think this was a CNN piece yesterday, about what exactly happened when Susan Rice spoke with House investigators on why, in fact, she did unmask senior Trump officials. Sarah Carter is going to tell us what she knows about this. She joins us now. Sarah, great to have you on.
Great to be with you, Laura. Thank you.
So Susan Rice was very, very confused about all the concerns about unmasking some months ago when this was first raised, but she seems to have jogged her memory quite a bit.
Well, yes. I mean, if you think about it, when she spoke with Judy Woodruff, she knew darn well she was unmasking people within the Trump administration. John Solomon and I broke those stories going way back in March, where we discussed the expansion of Obama powers to unmask. And what happened was in 2011, without the public being any of the wiser, what they did was they expanded the powers so that officials within the administration would have more leeway to unmask Americans. This is just unbelievable, Laura, because this is about our Fourth Amendment rights. Not only did they expand that, they reduced the explanation for why they would need to unmask someone. So basically, Susan Rice, CIA Director John Brennan, Samantha Power, Loretta Lynch, now people are looking at Ben Rhodes. We're able to unmask Americans, which is something that is only done. I mean, it's considered so highly unusual and so classified. No matter how much they try to cut this or spin it, it is an unusual process. The names of Americans are very well guarded, and people used to be terrified and still are of unmasking them within the intelligence community and even within the FBI. But things changed under Obama that Americans had no idea about. 2011, then 2015. Those expansion laws went within the FBI, and the FBI was then allowed to look at priests, infiltrate those type of talks between priests, between attorney-client, and reporters as well. So this is something that even if the law allows them to do it, it is something that Congress and the Trump administration need to take a very close look at.
Well, the issue, I think, here is, are we criminalizing campaigns and the politics of every 4 years, or, criminalizing governance now? You don't like what Trump is doing? Investigate him. You don't like how the campaign is going? Intimidate them through investigation. Try to find dirt on people through dirty tricks, surveillance. I mean, that's what police states do. That's what they've always done.
That's what they do in Russia. That's what they do in Pakistan. That's what they do in other countries. This is the United States of America. And in a way, when she came out and she did finally tell the truth, or some parts of the truth, because I think there's a lot more there that we're not hearing about, it exonerated, to a large extent, Chairman Nunes, who had said from the beginning there was highly unusual intercepts. We were looking at them. They had nothing to do with Russia. We were wondering why they were looking at these. So those are two very, very valid points. But the bigger point here, Laura, is that, talking to the sources that I speak with, both in the intelligence community and in federal law enforcement within the FBI, they say there is a serious problem with these violations, and that people are using their ability to unmask for political espionage. This is not coming from politicians inside Congress or people with some political play here. This is coming from people within the intelligence community themselves who are willing to come forward to Congress, others who are terrified because they realize that their jobs are on the line. Even if they go ahead and they whistleblow on this, it could backfire on them and nothing will change. So somebody really needs to stand up and say, we need to take a good look at this. What are we doing? How are we doing this? And what did they look at?
Is there any possibility of a criminal investigation into the top Obama White House aides maneuvering with the unmasking? Or is this just be deemed kind of judgment calls and not itself criminal behavior?
I think it's going to be the latter. You would think that they would want to move forward with something, but because of the expansion of the laws that happened very quietly, and remember, those laws were expanded 2011, 2015, then in 2016 they saw exponentially a rise in unmasking. So from 2011 until the end of, I think until January 20th, actually, there was a 350% increase in the unmasking of Americans.
And explain, Sarah, just explain again for those listeners who aren't into the terminology here. Unmasking is a problem, or unmasking is unusual because it involves the gathering of names of American citizens who are not under themselves any type of investigation,
correct,
probable cause. So you would think that the government can't listen in on conversations of American citizens unless there's probable cause to do so. But the unmasking does what?
And a warrant. So what happens is with unmasking, and this is what makes this so different, is that the intelligence community will throw out a wide net across the world. You can't just unmask an American or anybody inside the United States. This has to be an overseas intercept, and it has to be an accidental intercept. And apparently, according to Susan Rice, this was not an accidental intercept. They wanted to find out what Trump administration officials were talking about with the UAE, with the prince from the UAE. So unmasking itself is almost accidental. So I see a document that comes to me. I'm an intelligence analyst, and I look at this document, and I don't know whose number that is because it's all X'd out. But it might say U.S. person 1. But let's say that person is actually talking to a terrorist. Right? This is what it was meant for. And it's an overseas intercept. And I say, okay, well, it looks like this guy who's associated with bin Laden has been talking to this person in the United States. At that point, I can fill out my documentation to prove why I need to unmask this person. That was what the law was for. It was not for unmasking people because you're curious or because you wonder why they were talking to them. It has to have significant national security value for you to unmask it because of our Fourth Amendment. It's the foundation of our Constitution. We don't do unreasonable search and seizure, and that is why the law is so important. So even if people try to spin the story like, well, they were talking to this UAE guy. No, that's not significant enough to unmask someone, and particularly an incoming president.
So they were trolling. They were trolling for dirt. Let's put it in layman's terms.
Yeah, they were trolling.
It seems like they were trolling for dirt on that. Yeah, they're trolling.
Yeah, they were trolling, and it's illegal to troll. And you would have to have their number, and that's also illegal. You can't target the number itself. You can't target that number. You would have to have targeted the guy in the UAE talking about something that was of national security interest and then traced it back to Trump. That's what makes this.
You know what I think? I think this goes back to, I mean, someone like Susan Rice, and I don't know her. I have nothing personal against Susan Rice, but she was someone who could actually be not trusted just because of Benghazi. You know, just because she went, you know, lying about Benghazi. Sent out to lie about Benghazi and to 5 Sunday shows. I mean, that's just one thing. To me, that's one thing that, you know, it just sticks in my craw about Susan Rice. If she could do that, she could do anything.
Well, and she did, right? We do know that the statements she made on the Sunday shows about Benghazi were not true, and that they did have information that there were terrorists directly connected with Al-Qaeda that were involved in that attack. And then we see her answer to Judy Woodruff, who flat out asked her, you know, do you know anything about this? And she said, I know nothing about this. You know, I was surprised to see the reports from Chairman Nunes on that count today. She acted like she didn't even know what unmasking was. And then she went on to tell somebody else in the media, well, you know, for instances where terrorism is involved, then of course, you know, then I may be able to unmask someone. And well, that didn't appear to be a terrorist, unmasking. Yeah, UAE. So
all right. Well,
I would like to know how many terrorists she unmasked.
Yeah. They're trolling for information. I mean, that's my gut. They were trolling. They wanted to try to get Trump campaign staffers a hand in the cookie jar, and anything they could get was going to give Hillary a leg up in the election. In my view, that's what was going on. And that's a common, that's
Congress,
just, I'm flying overhead at, 100 yards over this. You're in the nitty gritty here, but that's what I see. And, Sarah, we're going to have you back on this. There's going to be a lot more that develops. Susan Rice is, she's just doing the bidding for the left on this and for the Hillary people or Obama or whoever was pushing her to do this. She's not acting on her own here. It seems like there's a concerted effort to find out dirt on the Trump campaign. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Don't go away. All right, let's go to Lois, line 2 in Arizona. Lois.
I'm just calling to say I'm just enraged that we're having all this discussion about DACA. It was implemented illegally by Obama, who says the president can give amnesty to 8 million people. And we voted for Donald Trump to stop this program, build a wall, get rid of the illegals, and let's have jobs for American citizens. And this whole discussion is not doing that.
No, it's not advancing the cause of America first, America first, America first, build the wall, America first. That's what won him this election. The forgotten man and woman is not going to be forgotten, at least not by this show.